Because in classical psychology, personality is considered a type. What type are you? Are you introverted, extroverted? Are you melancholy or tolerant? What type are you? From this model, we do personality. It's not what we are, it's what we do. So how do you do it? And so what we did in the book, Structure of Personality, we looked at how you language your personality, how you do meta-programs for your personality, how you metastate that personality. So that we also showed different techniques for changing personality disorders. Of course, if we turn it back into a verb, personality disordering. Because you and I have the power to disorder ourselves. Most of us are pretty skilled. We can also do ordering of personality. So, from the frame of mind to the very frameworks, our personal matrix, and of course all of this works in a simultaneous way, so it's very systemic. At the bottom of 22, it's frames all the way up, it's beliefs all the way up, and so that gives us the structure of what we mean and what we're calling the matrix.
How do you help someone to reframe? Like I had a son-in-law who he'd grown up and his parents extremely abused him. Took cigarettes, burned holes in the back, locked him up in a room, and finally they got him away from it in a foster home. But he was like 6 or 7 by the time that happened.
Okay.
How would he reframe? How could he convert? Now I could see how he could say, just put that behind him and move forward. But to reconvert that to a happy childhood, is that what is meant by that statement? I mean, is somebody is he a candidate for that opportunity?
One of the models I'm going to offer today comes from Martin Seligman. Martin Seligman was president of the American Psychological Association. He wrote the book Learned Helplessness and Learned Optimism. Recently he's written some other books that make an impact in the field of psychology. Seligman was a behaviorist, and he finally became a behavioral cognitivist as he worked with animals. Because as he worked with animals, he was asking the question, can we teach animals, can we teach the smallest little animals, even bacteria, learned helplessness? And one of the experiments he did with dogs, he had an electrified grid. And on that electrified grid, he would put a dog, and of course, the first thing the dog would do is try to get off that electrified grid. And if he electrified the whole floor so the dog couldn't escape, the dog would fight, depending upon how strong and robust the nervous system was. Some of the dogs would just fight and fight and fight, but eventually all of them would realize at some doggy thinking level, can't do anything. Some of them would just learn that very quickly, and so eventually they would just sit there, and they would be, when electricity would come through, they would just sit there and take it. They would learn helplessness. And in his book, Learned Helplessness, somehow the dog is thinking, this here is everywhere. So it's pervasive. This here is forever. It's permanent. Somehow this here is my life. This is me, personal. So he picked out those 3 P's, personal, pervasive, and permanent. And if you think about this, this is the self matrix. It's about me. This is the time. This is the world matrix, and this is the time matrix. And somehow the animals got it in their head at whatever level of thinking a dog does, and it became a frame. It's about me. It's about everything, and it's forever. When he wrote the book Learned Optimism, several years later, he and several of his associates had grabbed some of the dogs, pulled them off the electrified grid to a place where it wasn't electrified, and the dogs suddenly learned something. And what they learned was, anytime they put that grid on, no matter if they kept it on all day, the dogs would never sit down and take it. The dogs would always be active, and so he called that learned optimism. It's like the dogs learned the opposite of these. And so we write it out, not me, not everything, and not forever. And if we took away the not, then we could say, we could say this or that, here, now. So it seems to me that these are three really magical words. This, here, now, or that, then, there. So learned optimism is when we keep painful things out and so forth. So when I started doing the study on resilience, and this is where actually Metastates came from, I started studying resilience, did 2 or 3 years of study on it, and one of the areas of study was the children of survival that were raised in Lebanon during the war during the 1970s. In the 1970s in Lebanon, it was a city of war, and just shells and fighting and everything was going on. And children being born in that environment, you would just assume they're going to be traumatized. They're going to be traumatized. I mean, what kind of environment is that to raise children in? But in the 1990s, several of those children who were born and raised and grew up in Lebanon started appearing at MIT, Harvard, Yale. And a couple of professors said, you know, where'd you come from? And, well, there's somebody else that came from there, and somebody else. And they started gathering these people here in this country who had been raised in Lebanon. So they assumed that you had to be traumatized. You had to be. I mean, what kind of trauma is that? To live in fear every day and to be popping in and seeing people killed, seeing bodies and gore. And when they interviewed these kids, now college students, all of them had the same basic message. They all said, wasn't my war. And they all said, it's not going to last forever. And they all said, as soon as I get big enough, I'm out of here. And they also said it wasn't about everything, because they would sneak around the corners and play basketball or play some kind of a ball in the court, and they all felt like they had a fairly good childhood. The psychoanalysts, especially in the east coast of this country, kept saying you had to be traumatized. It wasn't, what did your mother do to you? It was, you lived in a war, you had to be traumatized. But they weren't. Same thing with Viktor Frankl. As far as I can tell from his experiences at 24 years old, being ripped away from family and wife, and just getting out of medical school and just starting his career and thrown into a concentration camp, as far as I can tell, he was never traumatized by it. In spite of the fact that he became emancipated and suffered a lot and lost his family, lost his wife, lost so much, he seemed to have come through it without having been traumatized. So I started thinking, what is it that makes a person so resilient that you don't bring it in the first place? And I think it's these magical words, this, here, now, that, then, there. So when I work with someone who's had a horrible childhood, who has been abused, who's had cigarettes burned into their skin, or other different kinds of trauma that people can go through, the first thing is to get them to stop personalizing it. This has nothing to do with you. It's an experience you went through, sadly and pathetically that you went through that, and you went through it maybe as a child, but it wasn't about you. The thing that most rape victims, especially little girls, little children at the child level, they start making those maps. I must have caused this. I must be responsible for this. I must have somehow done this. And therefore, I'm unclean. Therefore, no one will love me. Therefore, I've got to prove myself to be... And they make those kinds of maps. But the ones who can keep it out, it's not about me. It's about the perpetrator. It's not me. It was that, it was then, and it was at that point, this here now, or that then there. Once we can keep it out, we can rebuild and build up a new matrix. And so Seligman's models of learned helplessness, learned optimism, seems to me to be at the core of resilience. So to what extent do we personalize it? So that's personalizing, and then mapping things as everywhere and all times is what does. Here's an evil, here's a bad thing, and we bring it in. So the opposite is keeping it out. Now, if someone has brought it in, teaching them to bring it out and take it out and externalize it seems to me to be the way to get clean.
And I can see that. I see that as a way to get clean and move on.
Uh-huh.
But I don't see how then they convert that unhappy childhood to a happy child. It's almost like that child has to just be, that was about them, I'm moving on, because
So the two patterns, the two NLP patterns that I would then use once a person is clean is I would do a reparenting pattern. This is in Sourcebook of Magic 1, reparenting. What stops you from stealing someone else's great parents or the ideal parents and creating some movies and hallucinating, being loved, being valued, being treated as what stops you from creating a great movie? I mean, why do most of the movies in our head are not real anyway? So you can invent any kind of movie, because if you're and then change history pattern. We've got to change history pattern in NLP. And so as you change, I've changed so much of my history I can't remember exactly what happened anymore. Well, that's what's wrong with you. I got fired several times, and as I've gone back and changed that history, now when someone tells me about that, I don't think that's what happened. They say, I was there. I don't remember it that way. It was a good experience for me. Because I changed it. Because I'm taking responsibility for the video arcade in my head. So the movies I play, I want movies to put me in good places. So not only can I move on, but I can move on with some mastery.
So really what he would do would be he would remove, or that's not about him. He would get control of the three peaks there, and then he would. The idea, okay, it's never too late to have a happy childhood. He gets rid of the unhappiness by pushing it out, and then he creates or remakes or invents the movies. Yeah, it's not about. Yeah, I see my confusion. I was thinking, well, where would he go back and find any good memories to work with? Yeah. They could go back and forgive his parents and everything, but that doesn't really change it to a good memory.
Right.
Okay, I got you.
Okay. How do you spell his name?
Seligman, I think. Martin. And his book, Learned Helplessness, was 1975. His book, Learned Optimism, was 1990. And two excellent books if you're interested in that subject. If you work in therapy, I would really, really recommend having those there. Just excellent.
Latest one, Authentic Happiness.
Authentic Happiness. The interesting thing about his latest book is he writes as if he's invented the human potential movement and positive psychology, which is okay. But actually, he's about 30 years late for that one. But he started out as a behaviorist. He became a behavior cognitivist, and now I've seen him lately presenting himself as a cognitive behaviorist. As he realizes, it's about the mapping. It's the mapping that's making the difference. So if you really want to pee all over yourself, here's 3 Ps. It'll create a pissed-off life. And when you find clients who have a pissed-off life, probably this is going on. And this is at the heart of resilience and optimism, because keeping bad things out. And even though some of us probably we have lesser hurts, lesser pains, but we have pains, and we can make ourselves miserable in the same process. And we can also keep coming to the present and moving on. One of the interesting things that Seligman said about the dogs and the humans is the dogs, at the most, they would have to pull them off twice. How many times does sometimes you have to pull a human off of the grid before they get it? It's not happening now. There are places you can go. Quit living on the grid. But we remember. And so we keep living in the grid and keeping the pain going, even though it happened 30 years ago. And we're still whining about the childhood.
This on page 23, the development of frames, seems like it would be that's the process that I have for creating a character, basically. And
okay.
And it seems like, I just want to understand it a little better. It seems like it would be really helpful for me. So the experience, that's usually what I get from reading the story, from reading the text. And then this is where I've been unclear in my homework on how to create a memory and how to know how I feel about it and how to take all that. So if I have an event or a person or something that happens in the story, then I go to the frame of reference, and that's the person's.
And the one I would add that's not here for what you're talking about now is what we call perceptual positions. First position, second, third, and fourth perceptual position. First position is when I'm experiencing the world out of my eyes, out of my ears, out of my skin. Second is when I imagine, what is it like for Ashley? So as we interact here, I can take first position for myself, and now I wonder, how's he thinking about me? How's he hearing? How's he experiencing? It's the second position. If I step aside from Ashley and myself and take Richard's position, then I wonder how Richard sees us too, so third position. And we step outside the whole system to the universal perspective, so different perceptual positions. In screenwriting, it would be, the narrator, the screenwriter, playwright, and those positions.
So, how does that fit into to how the frame of reference is created?
Well, one of the questions would be, from what position are you experiencing the movie? Are you in the movie? Are you a recipient in the movie? Who are you identifying with in the movie?
By movie, you mean
the representation.
Okay. So let's use a specific. Let's say let's say I shot a seagull, okay, and gave it to a girl. So I have to create that memory, and I have to think, okay, I shot the seagull, and then the movie was the first perceptual position, right? Because I shot the seagull.
Okay.
And then the frame of reference would be, what is a frame of reference? It's deciding, it's judging something, it's good or bad, it's positive, negative, it's deciding how you feel about it as it happens.
It's any filter. How are you filtering it? Are you making judgments, or are you making non-judgments? Are you just observing?
In the moment that it happens.
Yeah.
Like as I shoot the bird. I don't know. I don't know.
Because this is not on this subject, let's
Okay,
do that at a break or something, and because we can go into a lot about that, but it really doesn't fit right here at this point. So we'll pick that up at a break or one of the lunches. Where we are today is that we've looked at the matrix, and what I want to do is to ask you, what was the most significant thing from yesterday for you? As you identified your matrix, started detecting it, became aware of different frames, what was most important for you?
Well, I was a little confused with the frames. It seemed too fluid, but when you look at the 6 logical levels in NLP, from environmental right up to skill levels, you get up to identity and spirituality, I kind of thought of those as fixed logical levels. But the 26 steps you show the fluidity of all of this, and what state you're in is at some level. You can keep digging higher and higher and higher, and the real question is, what do you want to do with this matrix? What does it do for you at this moment in time? And you can relate it to the perceptual positions. How do I feel about it? How do you feel about it? Or how do we feel about it in the communication?
So the fluidity was...
The fluidity, that is coming clear to me now.
Okay. Okay, good. Okay.
I was just going to say that I'm kind of a bottom line person. So the bottom line was how fast this seems to work.
Okay.
And, I have the belief system coming in here that change has to take a long time.
Okay.
And watching your demonstrations and then just interacting, it was pretty astounding.
Okay. Okay. So the quickness of how things can work, and that is the value of knowing the structure, because then you can go right to the leverage points. So, other impressions? Okay.
I was going to say the one statement that you made: be careful what you believe, because it can become a command to your nervous system. It's like you better be making good movies.
Okay.
I wish that I could have seen what you did with me from an outside perspective, because as Christine was telling you, she said you were just elegant in what you were doing. And maybe when you have someone up there, if you can unpack a little bit more so I can be in 2 locations at the same time. But what you did was phenomenal inside of me. I'd like to see now how you did it on the outside. Yeah, but I want it now.
Intern.
So guys, just think about that. When girls say what you did inside me, it's just phenomenal. I won't touch that one.
I was just thinking, I was becoming more aware of how much I need to become more aware of really being conscious of what am I thinking, what am I feeling, why am I thinking that, why am I feeling that, and what frames am I operating on. And so often I think it's an easy tendency to live in the emotion of the moment or the state of the moment and sort of either wallow in it or just enjoy it if it's going well.
Okay.
But not even being conscious of what's my triggers, what's going in, and if I'm enjoying this, why not do more? If I'm not, why am I in it?
Okay. So the awareness, it really brings up levels of mindfulness.
Mm-hmm.
And along those lines, like taking too much counsel of a state, I'm feeling this, therefore it has to be something that I need to focus on and think about.
Okay.
Versus like, what?
Okay.
You were in fast time and I was in slow time.
That's what you were aware of.
Yeah,
I was going faster than you.
Yeah, last night was simple. I hope I got a whole lot.
Okay.
Yeah, I was just kind of blown away with noticing the self-organizing aspect of the matrix, because there were things like last night, as I said with that, there were things that were self-organizing because I'd heard the word, or maybe because that's the way the mind works anyway.
Yeah.
And I was wondering how important it is to notice what goes on in this self-organizing mode. How important is it to notice this going on, or is it okay if it just all goes on?
It depends on what you want to accomplish. If what you want to accomplish is really awareness of how you do run your own brain and create your own reality, which I would recommend as moving up to that level of mindfulness to really take charge of it. Once you do that and do that for a period of time and you've made the adjustments that really work well, and you can trust that once I set a frame, it's going to self-organize. Then you can become less aware of the processes and just trust those processes. But at first, I would really recommend raising awareness and mindfulness. And of course, it's a special kind of mindfulness. It's witnessing. Just witness your own experience, and not without any judgment. And for some of us, we have to really fight that judgment, not take counsel of that judgment, because it's non-judgmental awareness that will naturally create that self-organization. If you bring judgment, of course, then you're doing the self-attack. And so just witnessing what's happening, and even if it's going in a direction you don't like, if you just notice it and welcome it, so that we don't have a fight with our own brain. And because sometimes the way we have treated our mind, our consciousness, our brain, sometimes what we've thought about it has been so insulting that it creates that fight, as it were.
I noticed that I had several frames that were fighting with each other, and they were kind of using me as a vehicle when this fight was going on.
We'll do exorcism this afternoon.
NLP, when I first studied it, was a bunch of processes you do to people.
Yeah.
And the problem was, which process do you use? And then you get into it, but I got to do it with their permission. And so it's the x-axis of the matrix. And the matrix is the y-axis. You go into those levels, which is buried in content and frames, and then these tools becomes useful at whatever level you are within the frame, which gives you much more resourcefulness to work with people and yourself.
Okay.
That's what I learned.
Okay. So yesterday was about detecting the matrix and becoming aware of when the matrix has us and how we can enter into it and step out and step in and start redesigning. Today we want to do training inside of the matrix itself. We want to power up. We want to find some resources. And the opening question I'd like to plant for you and for you to really think about is, what resources would you like to begin to really develop for yourself? What resources? It may be more flexibility, more awareness, more sense of how to step out, more refusing to take counsel of a state, more state accessing. What resources inside your matrix of self, your matrix of others, your matrix of time, your matrix of the world, your meaning-making matrix, what resources would you like to really add that would raise the quality of your life? If indeed the quality of my life is the quality of my states, if the quality of my life can be no better than the states I'm in all day, Because at the end of the day, when I put my head on my pillow, if the quality of my life is the states I've been in, and if I've been in anger and resentment and hatefulness and bitterness, what quality of life? Or if I've been in fascination and honor and curiosity and learning and playfulness, the quality of my life is the quality of my states, then what resources do I want? When Neo took the red, was it the red pill? He took the red pill and he exited the Matrix. When he came out of the Matrix, one of the first things they said was, we're going to send you back in. But before you go back in, you've got to go through some training programs. So think of today as the training programs. We're going to go through some training programs. We're going to run up, down walls and flip around. We're going to jump high buildings. And remember, nobody jumps the first time. Nobody makes it the first time. So you've got to learn to fall with grace and ease, not, ah! So we're going to go into the matrix of our minds, the construct of our mind, to do some training. So on page 28, one of the lines there at the beginning, Morpheus says, rest well, Neo, you're going to need it. And Neo says, for what? He says, your training. If we want to really take mastery of the matrix of our mind and develop that kind of personal mastery, we have to do some training. And the training has to do with taking charge of our meaning-making skills, our ability to set frames, induce states, step in, step out, develop awareness. That's part of our training. Our training also is going to involve the first two matrices of self and other and power. Self, because it's hard to get that training if your ego is in the way. So if you go into the matrix of your mind and you're doing training and your intention and focus is on self, in improving yourself, it has a toxic effect. So here's another paradox. The paradox is, if I get my ego out of the way, I can go in and develop my skills and abilities with much more grace and ease and effectiveness than if my ego is in the way. So one of the first things we're going to do today is to get the ego out of the way. But here's another paradox. You can't get the ego out of the way unless you have lots of self-esteem. Because who has the ego in the way except people who lack self-esteem and are trying to use people or things to prove that they're somebody. But when you start from the awareness that I am a somebody, my self-esteem is a given, it's unconditional, then you can get it out of the way and then are free to get in and kick. So that'll be our first thing. The second thing is then to acknowledge and own and fully pull into ourselves all of our powers. Now we've got 4 basic powers that we're going to play with, and out of those powers come multiple other powers, resources, mental resources, emotional resources, verbal and linguistic resources, and then behavioral resources. So those are our 4 powers, and sometimes in the matrix of our mind, those powers have been taken away from us. And we've been told what to think, so that we don't feel like I have the power for my thinking and my opinion and my voice, or our emotions. So we're going to do 2 processes this morning to really power up in our matrix and claim that. And then from there, we will utilize those for creating other kinds of powers, so that what I would wish for you is that at the end of the day, you have a sense of how to really feel powerful inside. Now, that may trigger some some semantic reactions because of the word power. Or to take full control of yourself so that you can manage with ease and grace and choice how you want to think, how you want to feel, how you want to respond and express yourself in language and behavior. So that'll be our purpose today as we move toward more and more self-efficacy. And we'll be defining 3 different things: self-esteem, self-confidence, and self-efficacy as the grounding that allows us to train in the matrix and to really to master it, so that it serves us and we have it rather than it has us. So that's what we're going to go to do today. So you can see the outcomes that we have for today on page 28. The outcome for this day: developing our basic response powers, the powers for and the skills for framing and reframing, using and taking an intentional stance with regard to our frames, taking ownership of our powers, creating the states of initiative and proactivity, blowing out all excuses that sabotage our best experiences and performances, and developing the wisdom of many flexible perspectives. So that'll be some of our goals for today. We're going to ask you to get into your groups, because in taking an intentional stance, one of the things I find is if you write down, here's what I'm going to get today, and as you go to your groups, I'd like you to share, what did you get yesterday, and did you get your outcomes that you set? What outcomes do you want to set for today? And we'll also get some of the name tags and get everybody to have name tags again, so we can learn each other's names here the first few days, and after that we can skip it. But we'll do that while you're in the group. So we're going to take 15 minutes in the group. And so group leaders, if you'll just let everybody have 2 or 3 minutes, we'll go make the rounds and talk about intentions for the day and how you satisfied yesterday's. So we'll do that for 15 minutes and then back here to begin the day. The first matrix I want to speak about today is the self matrix. It's the one that's so close to us. It's a central and a core matrix from which we live and in which we live, and that we take everywhere we go. As we start thinking about the self matrix and how we create meaning from it, the words we give to ourselves, the feelings that we bring to ourselves, and that's why bringing kinder, gentler feelings, witnessing feelings, non-judgment feelings to ourselves, so that we can treat ourselves well and treat ourselves with respect and treat ourselves with honor, allows us to have a central sense of self that then when we go out to do stuff, the mastery skills is not trying to become a somebody, but to express a somebodiness. And that distinction seems to me to be so crucial for success almost in anything, whether it's relationship or just success, just living with yourself in a peaceful way. So the core sense of self is where we're going to go as we start talking and thinking about the self. And when we think about the self, there are so many different selves that we can talk about. And so on that page 29, you can see that we have a list there. I'm just going to pull out a couple. A healthy self matrix, underneath a section that says our multiple selves. This matrix contains so many facets of our thoughts and feelings, our sense of self-esteem, self-confidence, social self, sense of self in the presence of others, self-definition, identifications. And so you can see a whole list of different kinds of selves. And with each one of these, you're going to have different beliefs about them, understandings about them, definitions about them, feelings about them. So when we say, what is your matrix of self and how do you feel about yourself, there's so many different facets. What I want to do is to pull off 2 of them that I think are really, really critical, and that is yourself as a human being and yourself as a human doing. Because one has to do, in terms of doing, with skills and with behavior and with competencies. And the other, human beingness, has to do with beingness or person as such. And it seems to me we need to build 2 very different kinds of maps around these areas. In almost every psychology book you'll pick up, you'll see self-confidence and self-esteem intermingled. And so much so that most of the recommendations for self-esteem is to become more skilled. If you can do more stuff, you can feel better about yourself. And of course, that's true, but that would make it conditional self-esteem. And if it's conditional, then when you can't do it so well, or when you're not succeeding so well, or when the money is not there, or when you just got fired, or when the relationship is hurt, if it's based upon conditions, then the self-esteem will just be up and down, very conditional. If it's unconditional, then it's just a given. And as a mapping, it seems to me that's a great way to map that my worth is just I'm a human being. I don't ever remember having to join the human race. You know, apply for a visa and fill out the details and immigrate to become a human being. That it's part of our givenness, it's part of our birthright, it's part of our legacy, So by separating myself and the maps I make and the beliefs and the concepts I make about myself as a human being and myself as a human doing, if we separate those two, then it seems to me we can move into that area with much greater efficiency. Our self as a self, we're born as a self, but we don't know that we're a self. It takes a while to individualize and to have an autonomy. And as we do so, our first definitions of ourself, who am I, come from how we're labeled and the emotions given to us and the connections. So we really develop our first self-concept in the eyes of others. And it still continues. Because our sense of ourself is, how do other people react to me? And so we still have that influence of other people. So we're born, the self is born in community. So if your parents or early people who influenced you didn't get through Parenting 101 or have that basic sense, then your sense of self, you may have gotten a lot of toxic messages. Messages not about your lovability, your preciousness. So by separating these two, and as we bring these levels to ourselves, I like separating them, and here's a little diagram I like using, that when we're born, we're born without any competency or skills. And this is an ongoing growth throughout life to become more and more competent. Of course, the more you learn, the more I learn, the more I realize there's other areas I'm not so competent in. And if we live long enough. So skills and competencies, my faith in myself to do stuff, it's a great feeling, but it's a feeling that is in relationship to what I can do. And if you confuse that to what you are, then you'll do this roller coaster. Most of us have self-esteem that based upon here, and at some level, because we have that sense of, I can do that, and we do get that sense, I count, I'm a somebody, I make a difference because of what I can do, then we can jump up to just asserting and affirming my esteem, my value, my worth, my dignity. I appraise that now as unconditionally valuable. So most of us can look at a newborn baby and value that baby, appraise that baby, we give worth and dignity to that baby in our appraisal because it's a human being. To do that for ourselves and to separate that seems to me to be a very, very important thing that will free us to get our ego out of the way, and then we're free to express ourselves with all our fallibilities, with all of our inaptitudes, with all of our mistakes, that we can embrace all that mistakes and be what I like to call gloriously fallible. Do you know how to be gloriously fallible?
So obviously there's no such thing as a self-confident person because you're confident in some things and you're fallible, so
exactly.
You can't be in everything.
Yeah.
So saying that this person or this kid has self-confidence is really not true.
Yeah.
He might have good self-esteem.
So if it's self-confidence, self-confident about what? I'm confident I can drive a car or work a keyboard. I'm not. I can start listing all kinds of things I'm not competent about, not confident about, and wouldn't trust myself trying to pull those things off. And in spite of all the incompetencies I have, I can still feel good about me.
But don't you think that's probably one of the reasons why people feel badly, kids, because they don't understand self-confidence is something you aren't. You know, they don't understand you can have self-esteem, so they think, well, I can't do this well, so I don't have self-confidence, so I feel bad.
We merge the two, we confuse the two, and sometimes we praise the children for what they do, and they get that confused. And the map they draw is, I've got to do more, I've got to prove myself. And then there's all kinds of things in all of our societies where we rate people, from grading to all kinds of things, and it's easy to pick that up. That I'm not confident in this, therefore I'm not as valuable, I'm not as desired, I don't have as much value to other people. And so it's so easy to pick that up.
You know, with the collapsing of this, there's been a lot of confusion naturally, and pulling them apart, and with the
addition of the self-efficacy, that has taken over this, which was previously collapsed. And so it gives a rise to the, whatever position you're in,
Okay.
you're confident that you can.
So let me introduce one more word, since Jim has brought it up, self-efficacy. Self-efficacy means that you can trust that you can figure it out. It doesn't mean, so I have self-efficacy, I could learn to fly a plane. At this moment, you wouldn't want to trust me to fly a plane if you were in it. Because I don't know how. I don't have any competence or confidence I could fly a plane, but I have self-efficacy in the sense of I could figure that out. So that's different from self-confidence. Self-efficacy is a sense that I've got eyes, I've got ears, I've got a brain, I've got these functions and these powers, and with them, I could give myself to and learn different things. So a sense of I could cope in that situation if it arose, or I could learn to master a certain area, and that's different from self-confidence. Actually, it's a much higher and a much richer type of a state about self.
So there's three things here, actually. There's the self-esteem that we have, and that's in the self matrix. Then we have the self-efficacy, that's in the power matrix, or the belief that that we can do things. Now, then where does self-confidence fit in? Where does it fit in?
Confidence will be with a specific skill. So I'm confident I can do. And of course, that's always going to be
I understand
relative.
that, but I was just saying, where does that fit into the matrix? Which
It'd be in the power matrix.
Yeah. So it's a subset. So the power matrix actually has two subsets to it.
Could you define, or can you define self-esteem and self-confidence just to give the difference?
So self-confidence is going to be myself as a human doing. As a human doing, I do stuff and take pride in doing stuff. And some things I just do it just because I'm not going to give myself a lot of effort to do some things. You know, I'm not going to become a gourmet cook. But I can cook. I have the capacity to. So that would be efficacy to do that. So efficacy would be something in the middle here. So self-confidence is I have faith in myself to do something. Self-esteem is I esteem myself as having worth and value and dignity, lovability. I esteem myself as a person of value. So when I used to do counseling and had a psychotherapeutic practice, people come in and say, I have low self-esteem. And so I would say, well, how low is it? You know, is it down to your thigh? Is it down to your knee? I hope it's not down to your calf, because it's going to take a long time if it's down. And of course, what I was trying to do is to say it's not a primary state. It's a state about a state. So it's really a judgment of the mind. Self-esteem is a judgment. So what judgment do you make? Do you make yourself the judgment that you have value or not value? Or to what extent? Or under what conditions? Because self-esteem is that close. If you don't have high self-esteem right now, it's that close to you, because at any moment you decide to esteem yourself and value yourself, it happens. And self-contempt is that close. How many people can fly into self-contempt?
Oh, yeah.
Well, that's just the opposite. Self-contempt and self-esteem is just the opposite. I hate myself for that. I'm contempting myself, or I'm valuing and treating myself with preciousness and dignity. Bruce?
So basically, the human doing is something that has to be earned. It's an earned thing, and the other one is not.
So that's a good distinction here. This is earned. So that's why I'm real hesitant these days to doing too much work with self-confidence. Someone says, I want more confidence. The first question I have, well, do you have the skill? Because you could get a person to feel confident, but if they don't have the skill, then they're going to look pretty foolish, even though they, carry themselves with confidence. But there's nothing to it. It's all wind. And so they'll look foolish or arrogant. And so the low self-confidence is something I'm going to embrace when I'm at a low skill level. It's appropriate. It's okay.
I see all these commercials.
If you get liposuction or we get your eyes lasered, you will have more self-confidence. Those people usually have low self-esteem.
Yeah, they're really talking about self-esteem.
Yeah. But self-confidence means you got to do it. Get the surgery. Have it done. Take the pills.
So the if this is earning it, this here is unearned or unconditioned, unconditional, a given. It's just something we recognize as we do with an infant. Now, with regard to self, there's many identifications we can do, and what I would recommend is don't identify yourself with anything. We have a pattern in NLP that Steve Andres came up with, a disidentification pattern, and in neurosemantics we have 2 patterns of disidentification, and I take that from Korzybski. Korzybski said all identifications are toxic. All identifications are unsane. Because when you identify yourself, as Richard just described on TV, with your body, because a lot of people do, they identify, I am my body, and if you identify with your body, then when your body, when gravity starts getting you, as you get older, we have identity crisis. If you identify with your job and you lose your job, you'll have identity crisis. If you identify with your relationship, and identify means that that's you, you're it, and so identification, instead of recognizing it, it's an expression of me. It's not me. That's the distinction. I'm more than my relationships. Relationships come and go as people come and go. Jobs come and go. I'm more than my jobs. I would even suggest don't even over-identify. Don't identify with your thoughts. I'm more than my thoughts. There's thoughts that come and I go, just go on. And there's feeling. I'm more than my feelings. I'm not going to identify. But in Western culture, men oftentimes will identify with their thoughts so that if you say, I disagree with you or you're wrong, they feel violated because they are their opinion. A lot of women will identify with their emotions and you say, you shouldn't feel that, and they feel violated. If you identify with your choices, or with your body, or with your roles, or your experience, or you take any experience. I'm a divorcee. I'm an alcoholic. I'm a drug addict. I'm a person who's been through bankruptcy. If these are identifications, it seems to me that starts an unsane process or a toxic process. So as we disidentify and have lots of expressions, I father. And sometimes I teach, and sometimes I coach, and sometimes I run, and these are expressions of me, but none of them is all of me. So the disidentification. Doug?
When you say that self-esteem is not a primary state, then is self-confidence a primary state?
It could be. Okay. Because if I am confident that I can type on a keyboard, then my confidence is about that. Whereas if I'm confident about myself that I can figure something out, actually that's what we're calling self-efficacy. I'm confident that I can use my skills to do something. So here is this complex word self, and our definitions of self, and our mappings of self, and the matrix of self, and how we're looking at self. And so what I would like to do is to do a process to really value the self and appreciate and accept the skills. So on page 31, at the top you'll see a continuum all the way from contempt to esteem, all the way from rejection, through 3 different states. And the 3 different states, we've alliterated them with A's: acceptance, appreciation, and awe, as 3 states that can really set some frames and power up in our matrix, get inside of our matrix so that whatever is happening, we're not personalizing. So with Sigelman's work about personalizing, bringing things in, if we stop personalizing so that we get the ego out of the way, then we can have really a strong sense of self. So what I'd like to do is to access 3 different states: acceptance, appreciation, and awe. And since these are on a continuum, I'd like to bring acceptance to my skills. to my aptitudes. I'd like to bring appreciation to my skills and my attitudes. I'd like to bring awe to myself as a human being and just stand in awe of myself. So with this continuum of these three states are all about welcoming and liking. Now with acceptance, it's kind of real low level. It's like, oh, okay. In fact, how I do acceptance, I shrug my shoulders. You know, it's raining. It's hot. There's traffic. Somebody's got to take out the garbage. It's not like, oh, boy. It's just acceptance. And you can think of something that you accept now with ease and grace of something that once upon a time you had a big fight with. It's raining, the garbage. And because that's the opposite of acceptance and rejection. Acceptance doesn't mean you like it. It doesn't mean you condone it. You just acknowledge it. So think of something you acknowledge. You acknowledge it. You could fight with it, resist it, get into a lot of conflict with it, or you could just accept it and move on. So it's a simple little state and not very intense. When we move it up a little further to where we have intensity and we have emotion, we have appreciation. So think of something small, simple that you just really appreciate. And I would suggest think of a small pleasure, something that gives you pleasure and delight, and you just melt in appreciation. Think of a movie that you've seen that you just adore and appreciate. Think of some music that you just melt in response to that music. For me, holding a baby would just be something of great. It would elicit lots of appreciation. Sometimes when I go up into the mountains and go backpacking in the 14ers and sleep out under the starry sky, the starry heavens, and just see the immensity, I have a sense of the immensity of the universe, I just stand in appreciation or even awe. So appreciation is very emotional. It's very intense, and you'll feel it in your body. Your breathing will change when you're in appreciation. When you move it higher, something strange happens. The emotion changes to almost a speechlessness. Because when you're in awe, it's like you're overwhelmed. It is so fantastic. It is so incredible. It's like you don't have thoughts or words or even emotional responses for it. It's like it stops us. We're stunned. We're overwhelmed. And that can happen in the presence of a newborn baby. That can happen in the presence of some wonder of the world, standing in the presence of the pyramids or the Eiffel Tower or seeing something historical or a great person. So these three states are three great emotional states, very little, a whole lot of emotion, and then almost beyond emotion. What if we took these three states and applied them to ourselves? And to create self-esteem, self-confidence, self-acceptance, self-appreciation, and self-esteem. And by setting that, then we can also just chase away all those internal critics and all that internal judgment and really accept ourselves so that we get free to express ourselves. So, Brian, what you said earlier, this might really apply for that. Would you want to be game? For those of you who know NLP, I'm going to do some anchoring with Brian. I'm going to use his right arm to do some anchoring, and so if you need to watch it anytime what I'm going to do, I'll explain it later. Those of you who do know, it's anchoring, it's a sliding anchor that we'll be doing. So I'm going to use this arm, and as I do, we're going to do a continuum between acceptance, appreciation, and awe. But I need to find out if you like going this way or if you like going this way. So if I said, think about a time when you were really joyful, and does it feel like if you get more joyful and more joyful, more joyful, or more joyful, more joyful, more joyful?
From my elbow down.
So you're an outer. Okay. Some people are uppers.
Okay.
But you like it this way. This feels like more and more and more and more. Okay. So we're going to go in this direction. So the first thing I'd like to do is to access a state of acceptance. So if you'll think about something that you just accept, and maybe once upon a time you rejected, but now you just like it's raining. Grab the umbrella.
Yeah. I like House chores.
Okay, house
Yeah,
chores.
Clean up, you know.
Okay. So think about that and just notice how you think about that. How do you do acceptance? And notice the breath. Notice how you breathe when you just accept. Notice how you look at it with your eyes when you just accept. Notice if there's any voice in your head. Just get it done. Notice the tone of voice. Just do it. Has there ever been a time when you rejected that homework, that housework and the chores and
Yeah, I'm probably kind of just rebellious, like enough of this stuff. You know,
Okay, so
no fun.
So notice how you breathe when you say enough of this stuff. Notice the eyes that you have when you look at it. Enough of that. Okay, and then notice when you accept. Is that different? Is that a different state?
Yeah, I would say it probably is.
Okay.
Yeah, because I think that there's kind of a rejection also sort of has a little disgust, maybe a little anger that I feel put upon that I have to do this.
Okay. Okay. So now move into acceptance and notice what's there if there's not the disgust or the anger. Just accept it. Now I shrug my shoulders. Do you have any kind of way of, you might turn your hand, you might shrug your shoulders, you might just...
Yeah, it's just like whatever, like with my hands. Okay.
Okay. Okay. So that's your natural anchor for that. Okay. So here's acceptance. I'd like you to think of something you really appreciate. Something that, in acceptance, you welcome it in, but not with much emotion. But think of something that you really bring in with much emotion. What do you appreciate? And you don't have to say that out loud. You can just keep that private. But just kind of out in front of you, just imagine it there, and just and as you look at it, just appreciate it. Okay, you got something?
I'm thinking about something.
Okay. Notice your breath. Notice your muscle posture and tension. Notice the way you look at it. Notice your eyes. If there's any voice in your mind. In my mind, I got, Okay. Okay. So notice how this state is so different from this state. Right, is it different?
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Because this is just whatever. But this one here, appreciation.
Yeah.
Okay. And you might have a couple things you might want to just notice. I appreciate that too. How you create appreciation. Okay. And once again, just keep this inside and private. Think of something that you just stand in awe of. Something it just overwhelms you almost so that you're beyond words and you're just speechless in a sense of just utter esteem and value. Okay, you got something like that? Okay, so go there and notice that. Notice inside how you breathe, your posture, your muscle tone. If there's any words there, what you say, what that's like. Okay. Notice how this sense of esteem and awe is really different from whatever.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
so
quite different.
Okay. So notice as we increase the liking and the welcoming until you have appreciation, and until we have a sense of just standing in awe of something. Okay.
Okay.
So what we've done is to access 3 states and to anchor 3 states, and after doing something like that, it's always good to kind of interrupt it for just a moment, and then to see what happens when I touch you here. What happens when I touch you here and here? So are these anchored?
Well, I would probably think about it a little bit more, but yeah, I could see where it's kind of making a physical memory, sort of like a physiological memory and attaching that to.
Try not to feel appreciation when I do this. Do you go there?
No. I mean, I don't go to not feeling. I mean, whatever the right word. But
appreciation.
I go to appreciation.
Okay, so that it comes to you. Okay, so that's when we have a good anchor, when it just comes to you, and so it's easy there. So what I'd like you to now do is there any time when you say harsh things to yourself, or rag on yourself, or criticize yourself, or contempt yourself, or beat yourself up, anything like that?
A few times.
Okay, so we got something we could apply this to.
Oh yeah.
Okay, but before we go to there, I'd like you just to think about some of your talents, some of your skills, some of the things you're competent at, and notice what it feels like when you accept that, you fully accept that. And let's turn it up to appreciation. Your skills, your abilities, things that Brian can do, the things that you have done, the accomplishments, and appreciate. Because sometimes letting them count, appreciating them, So just be with that. Notice what it feels like when you feel this about your skills. Okay.
Okay.
So there are times probably when you don't accept too much or too easily something you've done.
Right.
So feel this now about that. As you think about whatever that event was, feel this acceptance. And as you feel that, then remember this about what you can do and your skills and your competencies. And if you can appreciate your skills and abilities, feel that sense of appreciation for you as a human being. Feeling this about you as a human being. Remembering what this felt like when you were born, as you grew up, as you are now, in the days and the weeks to come. Feeling appreciation for Brian. And let's turn that up and have a sense of just standing in awe of your mind, your emotions, your powers, who you are, and the majesty, the majestic, the incredible, unconditional worth. And feel that, and notice how this is there. Now think of that time when you beat yourself up and feel this.
Yeah, it doesn't really
and
match.
This.
Yeah.
And notice how this will change that.
Yeah, I can see if I spent as much time at that state instead of beating myself up state.
In the days and the weeks from now, as you leave Denver and go home and do some other things, what if you move through everyday life feeling this about yourself as a human being?
That'd be pretty different.
And what if every time you do something that does count, that shows some competencies, from that sense of self-esteem you feel appreciation for what you can do? And maybe even appreciation when you make a mistake, when you don't do something right, you can appreciate, I can learn from this, I can grow from this, I can develop my skills from this, and then I can always just accept the things that go on. Okay. So how's that?
I think it's good. I mean, it does kind of frame things and make me think differently.
Okay.
You know, and I think thinking differently is critical to a few things I'm working on.
So we've gone from acceptance to appreciation to awe, and we've set the anchors here. But the most powerful thing is for you to set an anchor inside, so that when you move through things, especially experiences where you would have had a tendency to judge yourself or criticize, how will you feel this and feel this when those events occur? And you don't even need to answer out loud, but how will you know? Would you want to keep that feeling?
Well, not the critical one, but the positive one.
Keep this feeling.
Right.
Okay. You want to keep that. Do you know how to keep this feeling as a frame of mind? What if this became your frame of mind?
Well, that would be great.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. You'd like that? Maybe you'd be too dangerous with it.
No.
Okay.
No, that would be good.
All right. Are you going to keep it as a frame of mind?
Yes.
Will you?
Yeah, and I'm trying to think of how you keep that, or how I would keep that.
Okay. Well, you probably can't think of a single way to keep it.
Yeah. I'll figure it out. Right?
There couldn't be a word that you could remember, and couldn't be a color you could, or music, or any. No.
Yeah, that's right.
Give them a hand. Thank you. Thank you. So what we're going to do is to build up self-acceptance, self-appreciation, self-esteem. Any questions on how to do it? Since what we're doing is just accessing a state, then each touch along an arm, whether going up or down, will just be that, and then we'll just make it more and more as you elicit and induce the state for the person.
I couldn't see you all the time, but at one point you had your hand, you did a slide. When at another point you had two different anchors, one on appreciate and one on awe. Can you expand that?
We're building two states, and also we're putting them together. So acceptance and appreciation is for skills, abilities, the things I do. Even the things I mess up doing, I can still appreciate the learning, the growth, and accepting whatever happens. And then we build up the esteem. After we build up the esteem or the awe for the person, I hold that. So So once we make that a frame of mind, standing in awe of myself, esteeming myself, valuing myself, then you can say all kinds of things. You can say, and now what else can you appreciate about yourself? What else can you appreciate about your skills or abilities?
And that's when you're
Touching,
declaring both
twice.
numbers.
Michael, how is that different from a collapsing anchor?
Well, because we're not collapsing anything.
Because they're more aligned. You're not colliding with each other.
Right. We're building two different sets of maps. One set of maps is me as a human doing, accepting that I do stuff. Sometimes the doing works, sometimes it doesn't. Appreciating myself as a doer. And then there's another part of my mind, myself as a human being, and valuing that and appreciating that and standing in honor of that. For a person who hasn't gone to self-esteem, oftentimes this will bring all kinds of tears and awarenesses, and oftentimes people just say it is such a strange place to go to stand in awe of myself. I can do that with others. I can do that with babies. I can't. I've never done it with. So it's like we're running new neural pathways. So as you hold that and just say, just give it a chance. Notice how this feeling will transform your sense of self as you do that. As we do the exercise, if at any time you have any difficulty, raise your hand. We've got 3 people here that are really helping as a part of the assist team. Stacy is a master practitioner in NLP, been through a lot of the neurosemantic training, and is a coach professionally. So he'll come around. Scott is a master practitioner and coach, and so Scott and Stacy will help me to move around if at any time you need some help with this, especially with the anchoring or some of the language. So is everybody ready? So we'll just do this in pairs. We'll do this in pairs, 10 minutes each.